Salespath gives car wash operators unprecedented visibility into the all-important moment of sale in the driveway, the moment that happens thousands of times every year. But let's talk about how we do that. It all starts with your POS transactions. We look at every single one of the POS transactions, and in that transaction, we see things like the ID of the transaction, what time it happened at, whether it was a member visit or a retail or a conversion to membership, which wash package and how much it was. The problem is this transaction is missing all important sales information. So who was the salesperson? Did they float away? Were they there? Did they give the presentation we trained them to give? How much time did they spend with the customer? If we're going to train them or coach them, what specifically should this individual work on? What Salespath does is it begins with presentation data. As we give presentations, the employee is starting and stopping. We are saving the start of that presentation, the end of it, therefore the duration, who was logged in, which slideshow they used, and we have the audio file. Then what Salespath does is brings in the POS transaction data along with the presentation data from the tablets and links them together via a matching algorithm. And that's how we now know which salesperson was responsible for which sales and which transactions. We are basically attributing the salesperson to your POS transactions. But let's dig deeper into this link. How do we do that? We start by looking at the POS transaction timeline. So on this timeline, we can see when each of these vehicles visited and were transacted at the pay station or the POS terminal. We see the timestamp on all of that. Then we layer in the presentation timeline. Now we look at when those presentations were given, when they started and ended, who was there, which slideshow, and we have the audio file. And so then we can link it to the next transaction that occurred. So if a presentation ended, in this case, at 8:02 and 58 seconds, we look for the next transaction. In this case, it's 8:03 and 24 seconds, and we link the two together. You see the same thing here in this next presentation, and now we can attribute that salesperson, John Smith, to that particular POS transaction. And this is something you're going to see in your reporting, is you're going to see your salesperson name attributed to these POS transactions. One thing we really want to train the salespeople to do is to end the presentation, then help the customer with the transaction at the pay station or on the POS terminal. So we see here an example of a presentation that ran long. This was running, the POS transaction occurred, and the presentation was still running. This is okay. We're still going to put this salesperson's name on it, but when you go to click this transaction, the audio file is actually going to try to link it to the next one that happened, not the one that it really belongs to. If you listen to this audio file, it's really going to belong to this transaction right underneath it, not the one in front of it. So that's just something we want to remind the sales associates to make sure they start a presentation when the customer rolls up, end it when they've made a decision, then help them at the pay station. Again, we're still going to attribute their name to that transaction, and therefore the commission will work, and we'll still have the audio files we can listen to, but best practice is for linking is to make sure they end the presentation, then help the customer with the transaction. Next, let's talk about attribution windows of when we're putting that name on the transactions. 0 to 5 minutes after we see a transaction end, we're still going to put the salesperson's name on those transactions. Perhaps they went to the restroom, they're helping somebody with a project, they just got pulled away temporarily. So we still put their name on those transactions. From 6 to 10 minutes after the last presentation, we're going to put their name on it, but we're going to say that they missed it. So we're going to say that was John Smith, but he missed it. This is going to lower your engagement score that you're going to see throughout your Salespath dashboard and reporting. So the more missed you have, the lower the engagement score will be. Now, when we get to 10 minutes plus after the last presentation was given, we're going to call all of those transactions unattended. We're going to say, hey, we have not seen any presentation data, therefore these are unattended vehicles. They did not have a salesperson present. And those unattendeds are going to lower your salesperson coverage scores. And so you can start to see why having salespeople use the presentation tool really is the first domino to keep track of salesperson and salesperson attribution. That's a deep dive, but it shows you how Salespath intelligently tracks what is happening in the driveway so that we could drive conversion rate and revenue.